For our first speaker, Mike Lyles, he's a director of QA and project management, and he's been with multiple organizations, and he'll be giving a speak on the forensics of testing. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and get a screen share. This one. You can see it okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, here we go. 10 minutes. People that know me know it's hard for me to do. But the thing we're going to talk about today is the forensics of testing, and I'll explain to you why I'm talking about it, and then also I'll give you some insights on how that it can apply to your day-to-day job. Thanks for the great introduction. I won't go through much of this, but I do have a new book out called The Drivethrough is Not Always Faster. Not very relevant right now with drive-throughs being the only way right now, but it's 99 cents on ebook, so that's my only little sales pitch for that. It's a great motivational book. But today we're going to talk about forensics, the forensics of testing, and I want to share with you an addiction that I have, and it is I am addicted to crime shows. Can't stop, and I think most testers would say they're somewhat addicted as well if you've watched them. If you haven't, get ready, because if you start watching crime shows, you're going to see that it is very addictive. Dateline was my first. I started watching 48 Hours on CBS, very similar. There's always a scene, and then you try to figure out what's going on, and it gets you drawn into it because you don't really know how it's going to end. And then investigation discovery. If any of you don't know this channel on DirecTV or cable, it's 24-hour crime shows, and I'm addicted. It's on. I had to turn it off just before this presentation because I got it on 24 hours a day watching it a lot of the times. But the things that these shows do is they have a common theme, and that's how they draw you into it, and that's how they get us addicted as testers, because they start out with an initial tease. The show will start, it'll give you some background. Woman found dead in her kitchen. What happened? And the husband is there. He's got blood on his shirt. You immediately think with those incremental facts that he's the killer. It's got to be him. They start giving you misleading cues and clues, and you start drawing your own conclusions through the episode of, I know exactly who committed this crime and who is responsible and who is guilty. But as the show gets closer to the end, you start getting more details, and there may be an anonymous tip, or they may go to a surveillance camera, there's another great show on investigation discovery called See No Evil, which is all about surveillance cameras and how they catch people that they wouldn't have caught any other way. But it ends with a final surprise, and many times it's not the person you thought it was going to be, and it's not exactly how you thought it was going to end. At the first, if you start drawing conclusions, you quickly realize that you've made a conclusion way too quick. And as testers, we can't do that. So why is testing versus forensics something that I want to talk about today? And I'm going to give you 4 points. The first point is, don't be fooled by initial findings. Use what you find, but continue to investigate. Keep up with more than just defects. A lot of companies I work with, my teams will log a lot of things, and we get into discussions about whether or not that should be logged with a defect. Well, you don't have to put it in as a defect. You can track your own observations in your notes, but keep really good notes of what you're doing. Track your results of what you're finding along the way, what things look weird to you. And you may not know if it's a defect yet. Just track what you're doing and take really good notes on your progress, because as with forensic science and with crime scene investigations, some of those tips that you may have taken down that was not very consequential at the time become really important later on. Number 2, don't rule anything out initially. Crime scene investigators, you'll watch them on the shows, they'll quickly put the tape around. There's always the well-known yellow tape that says police lines don't cross. And they lock down the scene and try to keep things from being contaminated. But then they start looking for clues everywhere. And they start looking for every major and minor detail that they can find. Every single thing that they can see on a crime scene, they want to pull it in. Nothing is inconsequential at first, because they want to make sure that they just take notes on everything they see. They may or may not use that information later. And as testers, we have to do the same thing. We start building facts as we start testing. We shouldn't be ruling anything out until we're done. In other words, number 3 is innocent until proven guilty. Now, testers, I would say it's broken until proven quality. But when you see a crime scene or a homicide where someone is murdered in the house, the first thing the investigators do is they start with the family and they start working from the inside out. And as testers, we can start with those core functions and start looking at the core requirements of the project, but we really need to explore with higher coverage beyond and outside of that, the initial requirements. If you're working with a company that requires you to write step 1, 2, 3, and 4 and then test that ways, then do it, but go beyond those test cases, go beyond those steps. Number 4, and the last one's number 4, is compile the results. Great investigators are always in continuous discovery mode. They share it with the community, they post things on the news, and then they start getting inputs from the outside. And a lot of times they'll be analyzing their findings over and over and looking at how to take the input that they're getting from the community and draw their conclusions there. With testing, continuous testing and evaluation is critical. And the thing that I had someone tell me in an interview one time, I always ask the question, when do you stop testing? And I had someone say, when they tell me I'm out of money or I'm out of time. Great testers don't stop. We just keep testing until we're told we have to. And one way or the other, we do. But today I'm going to challenge you, not ask you, that testers must be partners in crime. And crime, by what I mean with crime, is C-R-I-M-E. C is collaboration, requirements, investigate, mind map, and explore. If you do these 5 things, then you're setting yourself up for success. There's a lot of expansion on that, and it's more than I can tell you in 10 minutes, but I'll tell you quickly, collaboration is critical. Years ago, we worked in silos. The development team did the work, they handed it over to the test team, and we tested it, we verified it was ready to go. We can't work that ways anymore. With agile environments, fast sprints, and the need to get to the market faster and faster, we have to work together and as a partnership. Requirements, understanding the stakeholders is critical. Michael Bolton, a great tester and a leader in the testing industry, said, you know, the one advice he would give to testers is to get very close to the stakeholders. And it's really important to understand not only what they want, but how they want to use it and how they're going to use it. And you do that long before the development is done. So understand those requirements early. Investigate early. And again, increase your coverage. Really look at things beyond just the test cases and how the development is working, but look at design, user interface, go beyond the scripts, and really be involved in that early process of understanding, is this really what the stakeholders want with their product? And my favorite one, which I could talk about for 10 hours, not 10 minutes, is mind mapping. If you're not familiar with mind mapping, and if this is the first time you've ever heard that term, please Google it, or please email me and ask me about it, because I can share with you all the things I've done with mind mapping. But mind mapping gives you the ability to do some really great things. The applications in the middle here is just an example, some features that you have, and then how you're testing those things. It's just an example mind map, but it's very creative, kind of like Visio, but it puts things in a very pictorial diagram for you. There's some great software out there for mind mapping. XMind is the one that I use here. Coggle is one that a lot of people use, but then here's some from last year that were really standing out, and that's M. E is explore, and really go beyond the test cases. I've said it multiple times, but I want to drive that point home in this 10 minutes that I have with you, and that is whether you want to write test cases or you're told to write test cases and test steps, that's fine. Let the mind map, let the investigation, let your coverage plan and your coverage approach to testing be how you do your testing, not just 10 steps and you're done and it passed and failed. Think beyond that. Be someone who asks a lot of questions and build a lot of conclusions based on what you do. Just like in a private investigator would, a forensic investigator would not just quickly draw a conclusion when they come into the room and see the crime scene. They would build their evidence and then take their decisions from there. And I'll say this, the drive-through is not always faster. It's not just the name of a book. I've sat in lines many times watching people go in and get their food and come out when I'm still sitting in line. So I stopped doing that. I go into the stores a lot of times or the restaurants and I do that. And I have dogs who I've told my family not to bark. And they're barking out my window. We'll take care of that later. But the drive-through is not always faster, means that don't do things just because of convenience. Don't do things because it's the way everybody else is doing it. And don't do things just because that's the way we've always done it. Try to be different, because things are going to change. Projects are going to change. Projects are going to change. And a year ago, nobody would have known what this picture is, but we all know what it is today. So things are going to change. As testers, we need to be investigators, investigative reporters, forensic investigators. And so my challenge to you is treat your projects with crime and be a partner in crime. And the thing I always do at every presentation is tell you, you have the potential to be remembered for the things that you've done today, tomorrow, and onward. You don't have to be famous to do it. You can change the world right where you are today doing exactly what you're doing. So what are you doing to be great? And that is 10 minutes.
Oh, you were right on there.
You were spot
Even with the
on.
dogs, even with the dogs. I'll
Yeah.
kill 3 dogs in a minute.
Well done.
Let's see if there's questions. We have a few minutes for questions.
Yes.
Jim?
So please feel free to type them into Q&A, or if you can think of one during another one of the presentations, just be sure to put it in there and start it with for Mike, and then we can circle back to it at the end. I'm not seeing anything in questions or chat just yet, but again, go ahead and put those in if you have specific questions. Start with the presenter and your question, and we'll circle back to it at the end.
Also, they could raise their hand right now if somebody has something.
There's one. So actually, mind mapping, and you want me to answer them?
Sure.
Yeah, fire away.
Okay. So where does mind mapping fit into your testing process? My testers are context-driven testers. We follow the context-driven testing school. If you've not heard of that, email me and I'll send you some great links that'll get you started. It's an amazing process. And what we do with mind mapping is we understand the product and we start mapping out what does the product look like, what are the requirements, what are the features, how are we going to evaluate these things, and we build on it just like you're taking notes. Like if you were going to a class and you start studying, you learn as you go and you build on it and it branches out. So we actually use mind maps instead of test steps and test cases. We have test scenarios and data plans and how we're going to, what data we're going to use in high level scenarios, but we use mind mapping to really, and what I find with mind mapping is that your project manager, your product manager, your developers, everybody can speak that language. And that's what the beauty of mind mapping does for me is that, they don't want to look at your test plans or your test scripts. You don't want to look at their BRDs and their user stories. But if you look at a mind map, it really kind of blends everything together and it has you speak the same language.
Great. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Great graphics too. Do you do all of those, or that part of the perks of being?
Yeah, I'm such a nerd about it. I do so many presentations. It just gets into me.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us too. I guess one of the other perks of having a Zoom meeting is that we can have people from all over the place. I don't know if you're all aware that Mike's on the East Coast, or at least East Coast time.
Yes, North Carolina.
All right, moving on.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.